Hi, welcome to Introduction to HR Concepts that I'm filming for my Introduction to Business course. This is Shoma Jurgensen. I am the Program Chair for the School of Business at the Maple Grove Brooklyn Park campus. Thank you for joining me today. So the learning objectives that I want to accomplish in this particular video have to do very specifically with kind of terminology and understanding of some very important concepts as you just scratch the surface of human resources. So the first is to identify the roles of HR professionals, and secondly, connect some primary employment laws to those HR roles. Third, we'll describe available training options, and you'll see where that fits into the roles of HR professionals. And finally, we'll compare compensation, salary, and benefits, so these three things make sense as you move forward into that area of human resources. So let's start with the roles. The roles of the HR professional in human resources can be contained in about 4 buckets. The first is the idea of attracting and selecting. So as you get further into human resources, you might hear about things called employment brands and your recruiting function and your interviewing function and all that goes with deciding who will work at your organization and where they will work falls under this role. Second is developing. In this bucket, you'll find things like performance evaluations, which are not just used to determine compensation, but they should be used in order to identify key elements of needed training. This is where education reimbursement would go. And those things also, the availability of training and education reimbursement, as well as compensation, salary, and benefits, fall under the retaining function of human resources. So why would an employee choose to stay at your organization? Now these can be monetary things like we mentioned or I have mentioned, or they can be non-monetary things like flexible schedules, telecommuting, the ability to have some perks, different incentives that may be time off, etc. All fall under retaining. And finally, terminating is also an important role. Not all employees work out. There are shifts in strategy. There are opportunities for a promotion for some, and others are ready to retire. So it's important that this piece of human resources be handled just as strategically as attracting and selecting. So let's talk about really one of the crux areas of human resources, and that's not policy, but it's to understand the laws that have been put in place in order to support human resources policies that we have today. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about, which is in your text, Better Business, is equal employment opportunity. And definitely it falls in your bucket of attracting and selecting the right employees. In 1965, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission was put together in order to ensure that protected classes, which we'll look at next, have an opportunity of the same type as other groups or non-protected groups. You'll notice I did not say that there's a quota. In fact, quotas are illegal. It is the opportunity of everyone to be able to interview for and be considered for employment in as fair a method as possible. So this is equal opportunity through the protection of protected classes, because in 1965 those protected classes were historically the most damaged by hiring practices. But what happens is the hiring practices become, well, the way we do things. We forget that with the Civil Rights Act in 1964, which is a critical act in human resources law and employment law, it actually precedes the EEOC. And the point of this is to prohibit discrimination. Well, why would someone say prohibit discrimination in this day and age? Well, there is a more systematic way. So for example, let's say that your organization has always placed employment ads in the local newspaper and online. Well, have you ever wondered what the demographics of the local newspaper and online readers of job ads are? Are you missing an opportunity to reach out to groups that you may not have considered, and therefore limiting the talent that you can bring into your organization? So in 1964, the discussion was around protection, and it does prohibit discrimination on race, color, gender, religion, national origin, and I've added here sexual orientation. Minnesota is one of the 21 states that have included sexual orientation under the protected classes. Not all states have that, and in some states People can be flat out fired for their sexual orientation, and nothing that actually has to do with their essential job function. We'll talk about that next. In 1990, you'll notice that's not that long ago, Americans with disabilities could be fired without cause, right? So we have an employment at will agreement with our employees. So the ADA, which is short for this act, prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities. Now the act says prohibits discrimination against disabilities. If you look at the crux of this, however, it's the people that are being discriminated against. In this case, they happen to have disabilities. And the question employment hiring managers, HR professionals have to ask is that truly an essential job function that you are firing that person for? For example, I know of a trainer, someone who trains people how to use computers, who is completely blind. How could that possibly work? Well, with some software support, he is able to continue his job, actually being able to see exactly the same way as everyone else did not affect his job. And so his essential job function was not affected, and he was able to continue working. Now, undue hardship is often brought up with ADA, and that is true. It cannot be something that produces undue hardship on an organization, but often this is viewed purely as money. How much money am I putting out for this one person? If you look at couragecenter.org, you'll notice that there is benefits to all employees with some of the changes that make work more accessible for people with disabilities, and you'll have a richer, more diverse workforce, which gives you a richer and more diverse consumer base as well. Finally, Age Discrimination in Employment Act. This is closer to the first two acts in 1967, ADEA, where discrimination based on age or advertising including an age preference. We want someone, 20 to 25. We want someone, 18, unless it has some legal basis. For example, pilots, it is okay to say that you have to be under the age of 60 to be a pilot, because there is scientific evidence that after the age of 60, most Americans' eyesight is affected, and that is, of course, an essential job function. Even though computers fly planes, you need to see the dials, and they're small, and you need to be able to land in case of the computer's not working. So in that case, it is important. But what would being 21 or 25 or 45 doesn't affect something like sales, it doesn't affect something like janitorial, it doesn't affect, in a way, even management functions, provided you have the other essential ingredients to be successful in that job. So the laws affecting HR, both Equal Opportunity Civil Rights Act, American with Disabilities, and age discrimination, although it sounds like are primarily in the attracting and selecting area, remember that once someone is brought in, it is the organization's responsibility to create a safe workplace for all of their employees and development opportunities for employees. And those that feel developed and retained and welcomed in a safe and innovative environment will also attract talent, and in that way bringing more innovation to the organization. So these laws that affect HR affect all the roles that are involved with human resources. So we talked about attracting, selecting a little bit. Let's talk about developing and some of the training opportunities. Now, training can be done around operational things. For example, how do you drive safely? How do you run a plant safely? Schools are doing lockdown drills in case of a shooting incident. And there's the development piece. So you've gone to middle management and you're looking forward to developing into an executive career track. What opportunities are available for you? So this really runs the gamut. You start with orientation. A really strong orientation is necessary, not just to things like computer systems, but to the culture of the organization, to the functions you'll work with, to the customers you'll be interacting with. And orientation, as well as other training, can be done in multiple ways. On-the-job training is one, but you'll also find simulations or online training. When I was at General Mills, I had to do a legal training every year that actually used simulations in a way. It wasn't, flying in a flight simulator or anything, but we would watch video scenarios and go through and simulate our answers to make sure we were staying on the right side of the law at all times. And that online training is very pervasive nowadays because it's cost effective and it's scalable. Management development programs take on a bit of a different look. You'll get opportunities to cross-train. So for example, I'll just use another General Mills example. Every year you're moved to a different division or for a different business unit, and the reason for that is to get a broad understanding of the organization. You might have a coach, a management coach. You might have mentorships or job shadowing opportunities. And there are off-the-job training opportunities as well. If you think of more traditional classroom training, and even education reimbursement as a form of off-the-job training. So many opportunities to build skills. It's important not to settle into one, but understand the interdependence of each kind of training opportunity. And training is one of those benefits. It's one of the reasons that an organization may choose your company, or an employee might choose your company. But often there's confusion around compensation, benefits, and salary. So I want to clear that up a little bit. Salary is what you're paid. All right, it's the money you make, whether that's by piece if you're working on a manufacturing line, whether it's by hour, whether it's salaried, which means you get a certain set amount every week. That is your monetary compensation. Right? Benefits also fit into this employment package. Benefits are things like, although not mandated by law, they're things like your health insurance, your life insurance. Perks are benefits, so if you have expense reports, short and long-term disability benefits, child care benefits. But there are non-monetary benefits as well. For example, flex time. Are you going to job share? Will that allow you to be with your family more? Are there opportunities for travel? Is there an opportunity for relocation to a foreign country if that is of interest to you? And these two things together, salary and benefits, complete the employment package, and altogether can be considered compensation. All right, so that does include things like stocks and revenue sharing and things like that. And one of the reasons this mix of salary and benefits has become so important is because the role of employment has changed, not just in the U.S., but as we become more global, we're seeing changes across the globe. So where we can look at compensation, benefits, and salary, we have different elements. How much of our workforce is permanent? How much is based on contingency? And how much can we do on a virtual basis? It really changes the way that we approach human resources, the kinds of attracting and selecting we do, the kinds of developing we do, how we retain, and of course, how we terminate is all affected by this new role of employment or social contract that we have today. So very quickly, I touched on the following learning objectives. The roles of HR professionals, connecting primary employment laws to those roles, description of some available training options, and comparing compensation, salary, and benefits. I look forward to taking any questions that you have, and hopefully this has been helpful in clarifying the information in the text before you take your quiz. Thank you.